officially live.
Cool.
Right on. Everyone, thank you for joining us on this little talk. If you have any questions at all, feel free to leave them in the comments below. We'll do our best to answer them, but otherwise we're just going to rant about track sprinting and training and just general track cycling as soon as Andy gets back here.
Sounds like him at the door now.
That does sound like him. Cool. You make it? And it's going now. Perfect. Right on. Where do you guys want to start it?
So good morning. I thought we'd talk about World Championships first.
Good call. Get it started off.
Get that out of the way. I think on the sprint side, I think GB's in a little bit of trouble with the Dutchies pretty much owning everything from the competition on the men's
They're
side.
Crushing it.
Yeah.
Interesting. Once again, I don't know. Probably all of us at some point have talked about it, but before you go to Olympics and it's just GB just full domination, and I think that has definitely passed in terms of one country being able to dominate everything, right? To where now everything, the sprinting and endurance have almost taken off in such extreme directions.
Sure.
Where it'd be very, very interesting to see a country that would have the budget to cover that spectrum in terms of still not being mediocre, but actually to win Olympic medals at that. So it's like, I think for sure that was a lesson too. Like say, we won't see that GB 12 medal domination this time around.
Yeah, no, as much as I hesitate to want to say that, I don't see that happening again. They always manage to find a way to sneak back in, but
a lot of territory, a lot of real estate to cover now too. Because I saw Katie Marchant still getting better and better each year, and then Jason Kinney. Who is your bet? Is it one rider in the Kieran that qualifies this time around?
Yeah.
And which of those do you think Kinney would still get that now?
I think Kenny would probably still get the nod on it. Carlin maybe, but it's really kind of hard to say because I don't think Carlin's got the experience yet. Kenny certainly does. Tactically brilliant, but he didn't look good at Worlds.
And a lot of speed on that. Even some of those finishing races, 9.6, 9.7
Sure.
in the last 200 meters.
Just
so
ridiculously fast. Yeah. And just at another level all the way through. And with the riders from the Netherlands kind of leading the way on the men's side that way, and then the German side with the women sprinters as well. Just there was definitely a show of force.
For sure on that one. And you talk about just an epically good handover, right? And once again, the importance of putting that money back into development of you have Vogel and Miriam retiring, but then just an effortless handoff to just more gold medals.
Yeah, just absolutely seamless transition through that program. And it's been very telling. You could see that progression going along for years now, and they just keep right on rolling with it.
And Emma Hines, how old is she? Like 20-ish?
Yeah, not much over. Yeah, somewhere 20, 21, 19.
Did she win everything at Junior Worlds when she competed?
I want to say yes.
Okay.
She pretty much dominated.
Which year she kind of graduated with? Because even for this year, right, of better, and then of course you don't get a better finish of your year than having a World Championships in your own country, sort of thing.
For sure.
But I mean, that's an impressive progression for sure, and even just one season. I mean, even tactically, right? I mean, her versus the Hong Kong rider, who really dominated the World Cup season, and then just a little bit closer, and really not that close, but flipped around
brilliantly well.
Yeah, exactly.
Tactically and with speed. The curious thing for me is what everybody else is doing at this point.
Mm-hmm.
What their reaction to World Championships are. How do we turn this around in the few months we have left?
Exactly.
And where are we at, and are we in a place that we intended to be, and does it match up with what the results are?
Yeah, and even more so than that, right? It's like, say, we always know between a World Championships and Olympic Games, 4 to 5 months there, but it's like even the same performance won't get you a medal.
Right.
So it's always like by the numbers, you need to be able to go 3% better than you did at the World Championships to win an Olympic medal. I think this velodrome in particular, some of the coaches sent me the air pressure in there, and you probably heard, but it was like 987, which is incredibly low, you know, so there must have been some low pressure front moving through. But I think just running in the numbers, that's really why for most of the events you saw, like, say, you know, really about 0.2 a second per lap, sort of like quicker on the times, because that starts pushing altitude air pressure 987. Usually
absolutely.
they're going to have 10, 10, 10, 15. So it's like, I would say that the times that we saw will be more in line with the times at the Olympic Games, just with the difference in the air pressure there.
I would think, the similarities between Worlds and the Games are going to be pretty close. But going fast. I mean, 41 and a sub 12 second lap on the team sprint.
Was it so? Okay, wow.
Yeah, just obscenely fast. And
one thing I'm wondering, how long until we see a sub 9 second 200?
Well,
I've got a little side bet on that one, but I don't know that I'm willing to bring that up in Facebook land here. But
maybe the next time someone goes to Bolivia.
Yeah,
actually, that's probably accurate.
Yeah, I don't think. I mean, 9.2 is
that's in the territory.
That's dancing pretty close. Especially at a place where you can go up another 6,000 feet. And,
for sure. I mean, even just the scary speed nature. It's like anyone who's even driven a motorcycle at 9.2 speed. That's like,
that's sketchy.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, because I mean, at some point you do start pushing the limits, even just the terminal velocity and going around, 250 or 200 meter track on that. And I would say that 9.2 speed is getting close to that.
That's getting scary. I've certainly not ridden a bicycle that fast, but I've taken a motor around the track at that speed, and it's in a two-wheel drift most of the time.
You've probably done that with tandems, leading them out.
Yeah, we went. The guys' tandem went 9.2, 9.3 here at a 3:33, but I
on the moto
that was as fast as I could go because I was already in a two-wheel drift with a knee dragging and it wasn't sticking. Mm-hmm. So any faster than that, and we just end up with a big mushroom cloud in turn 4. But.
Yeah, that's how it was at motor pace in Eagle on the 200 meter track, and of course that's 10 years ago, so a lot slower on the times too. But it's like you're going fast when the peg on the motorcycle starts like dragging the infield, where it's like,
you're leaving a divot. Yeah,
exactly. It's like, that's good. Let's go smaller gears and go slower, guys.
Yeah, don't like this anymore.
Mm-hmm.
That's on a 333 too.
Yeah, big turn 333.
Yeah, gonna have to bring those back.
Maybe.
Yeah, that's it's like a talk on that speed. It for sure would make it safer. I mean, it's going to even be like, say, quicker on those times, especially like an indoor sort of track like that. You're only going through one set of turns. A lot less to mess up for sure on that.
Oh yeah.
Have to be like an old 6-day track.
But even like, say, circling
banked.
back though too, it's like, say, imagine those times on Moscow now. That could definitely be sub 9 seconds on that with the big gears and everything.
Oh, for sure.
else.
Yeah, that 10 meter drop off with that.
Yeah, seriously.
10 meters.
10 meters. Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah. I've heard the old saying is you could roll a bowling ball sub 11 down that track. It is. I've never ridden it. It's like on my bucket list of things to do. Because
you went there for Junior Worlds, though, didn't you?
No, I didn't go to. I didn't go to Moscow.
No, it's impressive. I mean, on just that much wood. It's not just a 333, of course, it's monstrously wide. I mean, so it is. It definitely checks the box to the vision you have in your head of that.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would love to. I would love to ride that track one of these days.
That was the first fast track. I mean, I remember Jeff LeBeau, one of the first guys going 10-0 there. I mean, so it's a lot of speed in there. That's probably in a 98-inch gear or something like that.
Oh, for sure.
Too.
Yeah, no, definitely a lot smaller than they're running now.
For sure. Any other sprint stuff that you guys thought was interesting? Then what about any world record set for the team sprint?
Get team sprint record?
Yeah, I think they did actually officially get the team sprint record. They went where'd they go? 41
wow.
8 in the first round, and then 41.98. So
what did you say the second lap split on that was?
It was an 11.83. Yeah.
Did you work out the 200 time on that?
I didn't.
Times 0.8 on that?
Yeah, it's probably 9.4-ish from the bottom of the track, if I had to guess. But yeah,
And in the
haven't
second
crunched
500
numbers.
meter, yeah.
Wow.
Yeah, no, from a standing start, Roy came off, and is dancing with 16-second, sub 17-second start laps, and was probably over geared a little bit just so he didn't
Run up on him.
just leave.
Yeah, and with that, so yeah, it seems like for sure breaking up those sprint categories, like men definitely dominating. It almost seems like at this point, even like their B team for the Dutch team could dominate just at least a World Cup level. I mean, it is just the depth of even, their coach now. He was a rider from the last Olympics. Well, was he the Kieran gold medalist?
Was it Karen gold medalist? I believe so.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, no, I would have to.
But obviously, they just have a lot of strength and power moving forward, and then somewhat the German men getting left behind somewhat by those guys. But and then on the women's sprint side, I mean, I think definitely the ball's in the court of the Germans too. I mean, that's for sure on that. Because I mean, on that, especially with those young riders, that is a killer momentum boost of like better. Okay, I win, and now 4 or 5 months ago before the Olympics. I mean, that's
Momentum's definitely in their favor, and the Dutch men. I don't recall a time where it was Karen sprint, team sprint, just full domination. The last time I can think of a complete domination was maybe East Germany. Back in the early '80s when they just when their own national championships were harder than most of the races they're competing in, and we'll see how they, hopefully they can hang on to that, and they didn't peak early and all of these things, but winning team sprint by over a second on GB,
that usually doesn't happen.
Yeah, I don't see a
like
big
where is
drop
that
off.
second going to come?
Right. Yeah. You've got 4 or 5 months.
So, real question: do any of you guys have any insight as to what they're doing different training wise?
They're getting.
Because I could see them keeping that one kind of close.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's always been cool, and Abers has done this for a long time too. But literally, you can have all these different world cultures, all these different coaches, and then you show up on a day like this, and there's how many people that run a 10-2 or 10-3. So it just shows, I think, once again, there's always a lot of different roads to the same location.
Sure.
Everyone at this level is going to have super high standards. Somewhat as a filtering, it's like, say, no coach is going to make it to this level unless you're open to learning new stuff as well. Because, the Germans coach, he's very old school. He's been at it longer than anyone else in that infield in terms of, like, longest running national coach. So it's like, I mean, most of those countries now, it's like even when they come to, the Olympic Training Center here to train, you see once again just the specialized nature of just like it's no longer, hey, here's Coach Sparks or Coach Abers. It's, for them, they'll have their strength and conditioning coaches, all their physiologists, all their nutritionists. It's like
speeds are so high specialized.
Exactly.
It seems absolutely necessary.
Yeah, for sure.
34th place at Worlds was 10-1-8.
34th place.
34th place.
Yeah.
34th place.
Wow.
So I think on that, just more specialization of, at this point in the game, there's probably nothing like, say, big to say, hey, we discovered this, we're going to go faster. But it could be a collection of 10 or 20 of those small things that do add up.
Especially if you
and I think that's definitely the
specialize
case,
people for each individual aspect.
Exactly, for sure. And that's almost how those, now they've almost sort of built what the team sprint is instead of maybe necessarily making it to where it would be if it was just a standalone event,
Yeah.
Like, say, with the Kieran riders or other, I mean, the kilo time's too awesome on that stuff. But it's almost been like the team sprint has been sort of reformulated to fit around those other specializations, because before it would just be about the starter just worries about go as fast as you can.
Right.
Even if people, because I mean, the starter, I mean, that's like their goal is to do the fastest possible time, but that doesn't necessarily make it the fastest possible time for the team.
Right. You've got all kinds
faster
of things
exit
to
speed
consider.
better than faster lap speed.
Sure.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, even just a drop off, just with those gears nowadays too, where it's almost like just launching the space shuttle at that speed.
Yeah, getting handed off to second person is a ride at this point, I would imagine.
But Abers, outside the bigger gears and a lot more time in the weight room, probably a lot less time on the road bike. What do you think the biggest change is, like the sprinting in the last, like, say, 5 years?
Yeah, no, I think it's definitely an event specialization. You know, you have specific Kieran riders, you have specific sprinters, you have specific slots on the team sprint, and how it all merges together and building that program. But everything is just very specialized, very. You know, we're going to do this little niche, and that's it. You know, so you don't see a great many people making that transition between being a sprinter and being a Kieran rider, whereas even 5 years ago it was it was you know, if you were a sprinter you did team, you know, you got slotted in on the team sprint, you did a kilo, you did the Kieran, you did the sprint rounds, and everything was just a continuation of that. Now it's, you know, you're very much put into a notch,
like even additional specialization within the specialization.
Exactly. You know, and sprinting has always been kind of a separate entity from everything else, but it's gotten more so. You know, it's actually branching off at this point.
Well, I would think too that's gonna, you know, the countries that have depth, right, where they have multiple people who can do the same job, right, that's gonna take stress off of everyone.
Sure.
Well,
It's gonna
also
be
adds to the
intercompetitive.
competition, aspect of that too.
Yeah, when you have everybody going, you know, 9-4 in practice every day,
Makes the coach's job a little easier.
yeah, makes the coach's job easier, and it makes everybody faster. You know,
For sure.
You want to hang on to that.
Including the women, including everyone, including the endurance riders that want to sit on for that stuff. Well, that speed they can, but still, I think as a team, making one segment stronger does bring up the team in general.
Sure.
Definitely.
Chris, should we look at some of the questions sent in?
So far, the first question is about the difference between sprinters and endurance riders, kind of figuring out how you fall on that spectrum. And, a lot of just around how do you fall on the sprinter versus enduro spectrum? How much can you bridge that gap? Because today's endurance riders are getting almost to, like, a few years ago,
They're
sprint
10-year
speeds.
sprint speed, for sure.
So,
Yeah.
You've kind of
Sub 11 over here.
Well, I mean, I would say, you know, there was a story that I read from Charlie Francis that was something like how he would identify kids that were sprinters and basically just like spastic personalities, like just all over the shop. Like I think like Dom is a really good example of like
that fits.
General meatheadedness, basically.
Physically nuts. Yeah.
That sounds about right.
So reckless.
Yeah.
So if we're looking for personality characteristics.
Little reckless,
Yeah.
not quite right in the head.
I'm pretty quiet, pretty reserved, you know, so I would say that.
So you've been identified as an endurance.
Yeah.
But I think nowadays, I mean, for us, we've obviously got a great sponsor with Watt Bike, but even, you know, just some quick testing, right? It's like, say, you don't need to do some long battery of testing at the Olympic Training Center. It's like, you know, for us, we'll sort of evaluate on just, you know, your type 2 fibers, and that's really going to express itself of like doing a 5-second sprint on a Watt Bike. Really, it can even be at zero load. If your max RPM is at 170, you know, it's like that's a pretty good indicator of my money is on non-sprinter.
For sure.
You know, but someone who can naturally, you know, we had even at the Kids on Bikes that Chris helped us out as well. It's like, you know, you can instantly just see, you know, and somewhat it is. It's almost like the sprinters, for whatever reason, are almost just like attracted to that stuff too. Because it's like we had one really good girl, and she was just like, she was just like drawn to the Watt Bike, and then just like, I don't even remember her numbers, but it was like, okay,
I think she did like 12 or 1300 watts and 200 RPM, and has never done sprint work.
Where is this?
We tried to get her to come in here.
She was working at Criterium or one of the bike shops in town. Okay.
Yeah, she needs to get on track bike though.
Yeah, but she left with a perma-grin on her face, so we assumed 100% she'd come in for stuff. Yeah, but I mean, for us, everyone's seen our sort of leaderboard, and that's, you know, so it's max power, max RPM. And really you know, I mean, for me, if you're going to go into a school or anything, you just want to do mass collection on, hey, who's got possible talent or who moves on to the second sort of phase of testing. That's how I would break it up.
Sure.
Just like, say, look for that max RPM. I mean, everyone's got different stuff, but I mean, if you do this long enough, the speed of processing, just the amount of people that you can kind of like process and bring through, that also, you know, as you used to help with the camps too, to where that's the first step of like finding people.
Yeah,
you know,
absolutely.
Once again, it's better to invest in the talent than lower level talent that at the end of the day is going to have a ceiling of how far it can take it. So.
The watt bike is definitely a great tool for anything along those lines. It's relatively inexpensive. It's easily replicatable.
Yeah.
You get some consistency with it, and there's definitely a correlation between some of the things you can do very simply and very quickly on a watt bike that don't require a lot of nobody needs to take a core sample out of your thigh to figure out how many type 2 fibers you have. But
I think even just nowadays too, it's like really for sprinters. Like, is there anything out there to where that would be a similar model that can hold up to, like, say, 2,500 watts of, like, I mean, I know you and Matt used to use the Le Mans stuff more for kind of race day warm up stuff to get load, but
it was slightly terrifying having him on that.
Yeah.
However, because he's putting out 2,500 watts and you're straddling a fan that's spinning around at 200-300 RPMs or whatever it is, just between your ankles. So that was always an adventure because it sounded like it was about to blow up.
Yeah.
But Le Mans seemed to hold up pretty well for something like that. SRM makes an ergometer
that's super beefy too.
That's super beefy, but I think I think in many ways the watt bike is still the gold standard for all of that stuff. And there's really not a lot of things out there that I found that sprinters can actually do sprint stuff on without breaking things. That gets a little tricky. I know that they're making fixed gear adaptations for the kickers.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I know that Le Mans was doing some of those.
Velodrome, I think, who started doing that.
Yeah, they don't really like that kind of load though.
Mm-hmm.
They're not, they're not designed for dealing with 1,000 watts more than.
This is the Wahoo.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I haven't really ridden those too much, but yeah, people do love riding those with those Zwift stuff, which is awesome just to get people riding bikes more. Yeah. So.
Yeah. No. And I've been playing with it just a little bit with some capacity at 300 watts now. Whether you want to be at.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. Well, especially with the winter we've had. Chris, do we have any more questions going on?
We do. Let me. This is acting a little funky. Okay. Cool. I think we're better. Cool. So yeah, Burton had a question. How is training different with the move to bigger gears? Is it the same for elite level versus juniors versus the newcomer to sprinting? And what would the training approach be?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
Definitely a good question.
I think there's got to be an adaptation side of it, and I think leg speed with juniors, with the gear restrictions they have, is a valid thing to a point.
Mm-hmm.
At some point, depending on physical development, somewhere around 16 or so, you really need to start, especially if you want to go from U.S. junior ranks into international competition. You've got Australian man children that are rolling in at 17 years old, pushing 128-inch gears and going 10-2. These guys are fast.
Yeah.
And
that's a good sort of branch on, like, say, what you're saying about the progression. Because a lot of times you'll see it's like, oh, I'm going to ride this 130-inch gear, but it's like, well, you're also doing an 11.5 200.
Right.
So it's not the same thing. So
right.
I think just how most sprinters understand progression, the weight room of, like, every week I'm going to add 5 or 10 or 20 pounds, In my opinion, for the sprint side, as far as getting used to the bigger gears, to me that's logical. It makes sense. Like, say, each week 2 or 4 inches, but start off with something that's, like, say, actually reasonable. Otherwise it's like you're never really even getting on top of, the gear in any aspect to where you're getting any sort of positive response. How would you normally, like, say, progress a sprinter up to the big?
Yeah, no, typically the same way. Add some gear, do some over gear work where you're just going, okay, this is, it's like a walkout at the gym. You don't actually squat it, but you put 700-800 pounds on your back and just pick it up and go, yeah, okay, that's really heavy. And then throwing in some leg speed work. Both ends of the spectrum. I've been playing a lot lately with both ends of the spectrum, really over gear stuff, really under gear stuff, and then midweek training on something in the ballpark of what you actually want to ride, and then developing that gear and building on that. And that seems to be pretty effective.
I like that because I think now when the big gear phase sort of hit, if any side of the spectrum that people went to, it's like, say, all big gear stuff.
Oh, yeah.
In a way, it's like, say, an Olympic weightlifter is never just going to do just heavy squats. Right?
Right.
It needs to be balanced out with the spectrum, like, say, power, speed, some level of suppleness. But it's like, say, when you get that sort of strong and just stiff, but it's like, say, that's not going to be 100% applicable to race day performance.
Sure,
and
it's in relation to the question, it's the equivalent, so your junior gear restricted, so you're, riding an 86, 88, and, it's essentially going and, squatting the bar, for 3 years as as a power lifter, as an ollie lifter, and then, and then unracking 500 pounds.
Think
the day you turn 18, it just doesn't.
You think as a junior train like you're going to be on big gear, be able to race gears, and then just race day, just stick to your big gears and consider it leg speed day?
That's a loaded question, but I think you develop that leg speed, that suppleness, and that pedaling technique, all of that, and once that's developed, and once the physiological maturity actually hits a certain point, then you start adding that big gear training in, but you still
so that low gear basically gives you a good baseline to build
gives
for
you
the power stuff.
proper pedaling technique. I certainly agree with that, but
and it's harder to fry yourself. I mean, even with the just the elite sprinters too, it's like, say, or even endurance riders, always the bigger gear stuff, that's going to create that monster load. When it comes to the smaller warm-up gear, even just, smaller gear, mass sprint practice, you can pile on a lot more in that category.
Sure.
Instead of like frying.
Yeah, don't have a bunch of overuse
Exactly,
injuries,
for sure.
issues along those lines.
And I think just like when we were talking about the weight room aspect of just like progression, you don't need to be going, if you ask someone, hey, what do you think about this training, and they think that it's the craziest thing they've ever heard, then probably reconsider.
Yeah, it might be the craziest thing. Yeah, for sure. Yeah, certainly.
Probably a simpler approach, like, are you still able to go close to your max speed with an overgear, right?
Mm-hmm.
I was just going to say, if you're
Yeah.
turning 80 RPMs at a full gas sprint, you're probably a bit high in the gear.
I think one thing too that's a tough balance with juniors is not burning them out. Especially, I see it a lot in the BMX world where parents push super hard really early on, and then as they get closer to where they would be able to actually peak and do something with their talent, they just get bored with the sport or burn out and
Sure.
go. Yeah, how do you guys see balancing that one out?
That's a tricky scenario.
I think in that
Probably varies by
situation-
kid.
In that situation, right, the results are about the parents,
Yeah.
not the kids, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's the first, like, say, I think, hiccup to get over of just like it should be, almost like, say, any other level of development for your child, right? Like, say, even just their normal education. It's not just, hey, pile it on now until they crack and then never want to see it again. It should just be just, as long as they're improving, that's at the end of the day kind of like all you can control. I think for a lot of parents, the smartest thing they could probably do is like hand off to a coach who's a lot more objective
Sure.
and that sort of thing, and even has a long-term investment into it, because no good coach really is going to say, hey, I want to squeeze you for everything you've got just to get this spike this year, and the next year you're screwed or
Which I
something.
see a lot of coaches. Shows there's not a lot of good coaches.
Yeah, okay.
Because I think with like juniors, like let them have fun with it, and then like I don't know 16 or so, maybe really start focusing a little more then.
Yeah, I think some of it just, the coach can kind of lead by example. I mean, the kids, I think we always, forget really how much they're always observing and just modeling their behavior. So I think on that of just outlining still the importance of, hey, whatever we do well, we do it the best we can. We don't quit. But yeah, it's like always give it to where it's something that they can achieve. I think that's a good way to put it.
Okay, got another question. Go for it.
Well, I was going to say, like, making it fun, and then, also kind of Andy was touching on, like, not quitting, right? That's just going to be, like, a generally good life experience.
Life skill,
Sure.
for sure.
No, definitely agree with there. And that's why I think sport in general is really good
for
for
sure.
kids.
Exactly.
And I think it's perfectly okay, regardless of what level you're doing. You should probably be enjoying it.
It's a good point.
Right? I mean,
yeah.
if you're not,
It's
if
a good general rule.
there's not this inherent enjoyment in the sport,
Yeah.
You're not going to stick with it.
Right.
Even on that, it's like,
Yeah, and you're not going to make much money in this to treat it as a career.
Well, yeah,
at least in the U.S.
For sure.
Cool. So another question from Daryl: are elite level sprinters doing explosive plyometric work and leg speed exercises year round, or only during specific training blocks leading up to key races?
I think at least some level of intensity year round. That's
like at
something
least
that,
level of maintenance.
Yeah.
Always a little bit of everything.
Yeah, even on a hypertrophic phase, where they're just really trying to load the muscle on. There's still that I think it's important to have that adaptation continuously.
And I think just once again of just the beauty of the human body, right? It adapts what we ask it to do. So if you just ask it just nonstop to make slow, heavy movements, like that trains your body to move slowly, So it's like, even if that's a level of maintenance of just, because at the end of the day, the plyometrics or any of the, high speed force, where it's like, it's not, how much time is that going to take? 5 minutes, even for a level of maintenance sort of thing, to balance it out.
And it definitely doesn't fatigue you like super heavy sets.
For sure.
Yeah. Cool. No other questions right now, but other training advice or anything that'd be beneficial for people looking to get faster in the sport? I know it's a very broad question. Like, where do you guys normally see people going wrong with their training? Because there's a lot of people that definitely just get on and just kind of throw everything at the wall all the time.
I see a lot of people when they start to struggle, their default is immediately that they need to do more.
I could definitely see that.
Back it off and
or back it off or change it.
Or reevaluate. Yeah, because at the end of the day, right? It's like, say, with everything that we have to measure performance now, it's like, if you have a 3-week on or however you're formulating your training, it's like at the end of the day, if your training is not making you faster, it's not working.
Right.
So it's like you need to come to that conclusion. So evaluating, that doesn't mean more of it's going to make it better. It's more than likely more of it will make it even worse.
Sure.
So I think, just evaluating like what you're doing is a starting point too. And I think even just now, it's like in Colorado Springs, but it's like really every velodrome now around the country, there's like no shortage of like, say, good coaches to help out, where sometimes people might say it's like, whatever amount to spend, but in the grand scheme of how much you're spending on your bike racing in general, it's like that is the best investment really that you'd ever make.
For sure.
You can never be objective with yourself on that. So it's like Rob said, it's like the triathlon style, like when in doubt, let me just do more.
Yeah.
And that, no one ever said that worked for me.
Actually, early in my coaching career, I had a gentleman come up and ask me that, and he was not, he was an endurance track rider. He was not finishing well in these races, scratch races, points races, wasn't getting
like
points.
Sprint
finishes, yeah. I was like, okay, well, what are you doing? And and he was doing these just huge monster miles. No sprint work, no. It's like, okay, why don't you back that off?
Yeah.
And it just kind of goes to show that there is no, when you're dealing with yourself, there is no. It's very difficult to be objective.
To transcend your own perspective.
For sure. And just having somebody go, why don't you do some sprint work?
I could see that being a hard sell to an athlete too. That's like going from obscene miles to back the quantity off, to a quarter of what you're doing.
In terms of like
quality.
say because that's a great thing to touch on though. Because really, I think for all of us could agree, it's like the thing that you could get the most bang from your buck, like training, would be to lower your volume and increase your quality. And that checks the box of like, say, that's what pays the bills. And I think the mistake of any mistakes to be made, that's the one that people make. Endurance, right? They really like to say more equals better. That's ingrained from the beginning. More equals better. When it's like, say, no, with the operating assumption that you're not a lazy person, you want to work hard. Actually, it's like, say, more is just more. It's like we're not training for some 7-hour race, especially for the track, to where it's more high octane fuel, high octane demands. But whether that's, sprinting or endurance, it's like focusing on like race quality sort of efforts and performance. You don't need to do 10 of those, but I think just you will not get that sort of adaptation if you still keep those endurance volumes up here.
Sure.
Yeah, even when I was doing only sprint stuff, I even saw my FTP go up. And I think my longest effort was 30 seconds. It's amazing how much that carries over just doing quality work.
Well, Rob had some interesting evaluations this year. It's like, obviously, the winter here in Colorado Springs has been pretty horrible.
Yeah.
But it's like he's worked on, his areas of weakness, and E-Way somewhat like that too, of like getting really good time trial results of just doing big year standing start 2K stuff. But now I think your fitness really has probably never been higher in terms of like, say, at least this time of the year, really, with not with no crazy markets.
Certainly seems that way.
Yeah, maybe it's in 6 to 8 hours a week too, which I think is the most surprising part. And then I even went to Tucson last week to do this U.S. military endurance sports camp, and that was about 30 hours of riding. and never bonked, never had any problems. Could take super long, hard pulls.
Because once again, it shows you're strong, right? So say you're strong, you're really all your sub 20-minute power, you might not be doing, 5-hour rides, but, on a strength level, it's like you're checking the boxes to the demands.
Right.
I think that's the important part. How many 5-hour races are you planning to do?
None. I think even the longest road race here in Colorado that I would do would be about 3 hours at most.
Mm-hmm. Sure. And once again, just like when we were talking about just doing heavy squats, right? It's like, say, the malleability of your body, like say 5-hour rides. What does that train your body to do?
Yeah.
Go really long, really slow.
Exactly. Yeah. So on that, I think whether it's masters, even, at a track level, but focusing more on like quality, all capital letters, like back down your endurance volume and focus on, hey, at least 1 to 2 key workouts a week where you're going in. You don't want to be, I think, 100% recovered because some of that stuff you're going to feel stale. But whatever, an hour or 2-hour ride the day before, and then just 1 or 2 of those key workouts, like that's where a rider, I think sprinter, U.S. sprinter level, or endurance rider could get the most bang for the buck.
Really focusing on
Rob's coaching 6 to 8 hours a week just because he's working actually a couple jobs. But everything he does is like quality focused. Why am I doing this? Which box on the training spectrum does this check if I only have 5 or 6 workouts I can do? So, but I think that's, of any one adjustment that someone could make really across the board, I think that's it. Focus on quality more.
And the benefit to that too as well is, if you're not taking those 5-hour rides, you're getting that extra 2-3 hours to recover. So you get that recovery aspect.
And even
of it
that's
as
where
well.
the body starts breaking down to really when you start adding on those 25 or 30-hour training weeks, because it's once again like what box is that actually checking. And really, it helps you not check a lot of boxes.
Yeah, it takes a lot off
even
the
just
plate.
those little naggy injuries. It just if you take care of them, would turn out to be nothing. But then they just get chipped away and pushed down more. And I think just even at pro tour level, they obviously do have 5 to 7 hour races, but still that quality on reverse periodization, just focusing on quality for sure. Is the trend. Even at a pro road level. So
Nice. Actually, got another question from Daryl. Have you seen match sprint tactics change much over the past decade? And if so, could that be related to gear selection? Yeah, definitely say it's changed a bit.
Oh,
Yeah, they definitely don't spend much time going slower now.
It's
the gear side.
It's definitely a drag race.
I think yes and no. Clearly the tactics have changed because everything is fast. Everything is
on the gears.
If you're not
you definitely need a longer.
if you're not
sprint.
rolling at 325. 350
there's a reason
meters
those
out.
sprints used to be so short, right? Where
Because
you
they're
can
running
only
at
have 220 RPM for so long. Because like say in the 90s, you see the sprinting. Because literally the gears are so small. On the 333,
they're warm-up gears now.
They were basically half lap sprints. It's like you saw a lot more of the cat and the mouse.
Yeah.
No one's going to go full gas for 2 laps in a 94-inch gear.
But they were doing it from 2K an hour, from a track stand, going. I think the basic tactics are the same. You still have altitude, you have speed, you
still
have
to learn how to
runs, you have
pass.
but it's so much faster at this point.
Makes sense.
Everything
is sped
is
up
just
significantly.
for sure.
Makes sense. Nice. Another question, our Sean Powers wants to talk about bike fit a little bit.
Sean Powers.
The Sean Powers. Sean, by the way, has puked during Andy's training sessions, just for everyone's info.
And just so everyone knows, he's done the job right, too. So I think he's at 100% actualization on his puke per workout ratio. But another one of our local fastmen, super nationally talented, and one of our military athletes. So Sean's the real deal. So
yeah, he's got those Trinidad genetics.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. But as far as bike fit goes, I'm far from a fit expert. You guys, probably Rob knows more than me, but getting in a position that's aero and you can produce power, and I think that just takes a lot of trial and error, and there's a lot of variables with like flexibility and body size and proportion and everything like that. But I think a lot of trial and error to get as aero as you can without like drastically affecting power output.
Well, I think even just using like a video camera or something, there's a lot of just sort of no-nonsense ways to just look at a position, without having, access to like, say, a wind tunnel, which maybe like 99% of people don't really need anyway.
Yeah.
You could learn a lot just from looking at it, using a stopwatch. You know, is this faster? You know.
You're having your buddy take a picture or video, and
Yeah.
because I mean, even on that, unless it's like Missy out in T-Town, and there's a lot of like say bike fitters who are never going to really understand like the fit for a track sprint, right? Because it's like say the only thing holding you back on the velodrome is like say your wind drag. So it's like, you know, what's something someone might think, hey, you would never ever ride that position on the road, and it's like, yeah, you're absolutely correct. But it's like, for the track, it's like, how long are you riding in that position? 30 seconds really maximum on that. So it's like, it needs to be, like you said, still able to produce power. My feeling on that is like you see some top level riders even with extreme positions of like, once again, the malleability of the body. You know, it's like, I think start with a fast position and then just try it out. Like give it an honest review of like, could I ride this? You know, but because I think over time you will adjust on certain aspects of that.
Absolutely.
The top level, you see some pretty extreme positions. I mean, even now for endurance stuff, you see some extreme positions.
Yeah, like it was like Willem Van Schip with his super narrow bars. You know, but obviously he's thought about that and tailored that position for a while now. You know, different machinations. He's tried it on the road. You know, he's experimented with it. So he's probably got enough feedback from that to know that that's a fast position for him.
Yeah.
And even the Dutch, like you guys were talking earlier, it's like they've all got super extreme narrow positions. They're actually quite high in the front end. So
just minimizing that front layer.
Yeah, they're bringing their elbows down. I mean, there are lots of different ideas at work there.
Thanks. Another one kind of related to fit from Jennifer. Have any of your elite riders switched to short cranks to get more aero, 155 and shorter, and has this affected the ability to push gears needed to win sprints? The little bit of data I've read shows that you don't see a drastic change in power output with crank length, just where you produce the power in the RPM range. Does that?
It just
I
changes.
only know one person that tried a real world experiment with that, and that's actually my first coach, John Fraley. And he actually had made 150 millimeter cranks, and I think he only ever went like 10.7 with them, but it was just kind of, he ended up going back to 165 or 170 shortly after it. Just said it didn't make a difference. So,
and some of the endurance riders I've heard too, I don't know, for Ashton's on the super bike, I don't think he could get actually 155s on there. But I've heard, different thing with the GB riders. It's not just like, say, it's more of a aerodynamic thing, which, like, say, the dirty sort of circle of turbulence is smaller on that. I've got my own sort of opinions on that. I mean, in general, for me, with the crank size on that, where I think people just overly obsessed, because when you start talking about 5 millimeters, it's like, really, guys, it's like,
right.
But it's always, I mean, even since I got started in cycling, it's like, say, you talk about something that always will, it's almost like your political views. Like, what are your view on crank size?
Yeah, because I know a lot of people obsess over, but all the data I've seen, it's not that significant.
Kind of a wash,
But I could see one advantage with shorter cranks is you could get into a little bit more aggressive position just because your knees aren't coming up as high. So that could definitely be an advantage.
It does open up the hip angle and, you know, could theoretically allow for something lower. But if you're not flexible enough to do that and hold that, then it won't really matter.
But I think just sort of like what we were kind of talking about with your coaching program, right? It's like, do you have an honest assessment? You know, like you said, like try to do an apples to apples comparison, not setting the stage for failure or success, just like say just your own version of just a science experiment. Abers, what were you going to say on that?
I was just going to say that I played a lot with training with really short cranks. Putting 100 millimeter, tandem cranks on an ergometer and spinning at 300 plus RPMs. Just developing that cycling rate, that firing rate into the muscles seems beneficial.
Yeah, and to me that's logical, because I had heard that Chris Hoy used to do sort of some stuff like that as well. Probably not 100 millimeter, but something, same thing. Like say you're burning into at a neuromuscular level, and to me that's sound logic on that.
Nice.
Yeah, Jim Martin's got some interesting studies on that as well.
When he worked with the Australian team, I'm sure on that.
Another one from Sean. Recovery for a Masters racer seems to be way different from younger racer. What are some signs we should look out for when we're not recovering properly?
How come everybody looked at me?
Brian's house of pain.
Sleep.
Exactly.
You know,
And I think that's the number one recovery modality that everyone has access to for free.
Sure.
And I guess that's not a completely fair statement because people have different family obligations, but it is, I think, if there's any sort of absolutes to give as advice, the sleep is a huge
get
one.
more sleep. And you know, one of the things I notice when I start getting really fatigued is my sleep quality and level and volume goes way down. Ironically, you know, it.
No, I definitely get to a point when I'm too fatigued, like I just can't sleep well at all,
Yeah.
and like I just can't like sit still in bed, like just restless legs, everything.
Yeah.
Sure.
Yeah, there's sort of like the telltale, like old school, like elevated heart rate, night sweats, irritability, you know, those sorts of
Definitely
things.
irritability.
Yeah. And on that, it's like, say, once again, listening to the body instead of like, I need more training.
Right. I'll just push through this.
Yeah, exactly.
My peak power's down 500 watts. I'm gonna keep doing bigger efforts.
Yeah,
Right.
exactly.
I think
and once
for
again, that's
me-
a nice one. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was gonna say like if I go to a workout or you know I'm supposed to do a certain type of
Yeah,
effort and I
you're down
don't
10 or
feel
20%,
motivated,
yeah.
or the numbers are super low, that's all I
The
really
motivation
need to see.
is a big one, and that's once again tied in of like say, like say, sort of listen to your body on that. But also, it's like if you do keep pushing, and that was sort of the design for us to do those warm up like sprints at the beginning of those erg workouts. Always is sort of the diagnostic reading. If you're 10 or 20% off, that's a good little red flag to say, hey, maybe we should rest instead of bury ourselves more.
Good idea.
And you can play with that with, you know, we do cadence, you know, cadence jumps, see what the cadence
It'd be
is.
the same principle.
Power, there's a couple
Like
of
those
different
little
ways you can
markers
do
that
it.
start falling off before big problems happen.
Sure.
It's a good one. Actually, more from me, just because I found it really interesting when Fryer would talk to me about it. The effect of life stress versus training stress and how that factors into the big picture of training for a competition. Because one thing that always blew me away was like really stressful, busy days, like not even training related, will almost fatigue me more for my training than my training itself. Like, how do you guys balance that, judge that? Do you just look at each athlete's individual lifestyle and kind of adjust, or throw stuff at them and see what they can handle?
I typically encourage people to kind of keep a journal of that sort of stuff. So if there's like a bad session that doesn't really have any explanation, they can at least look back and be honest and be like, oh, actually, you know,
I worked 15 hours the day before.
yeah, or you know,
Sure.
Or even when it happens again for the second or third time, right? Where it's
Yeah.
like,
at least there's some explanation for
Yeah.
it.
It's a pattern, not a...
well, because on that, it's, I mean, I've always, you know, it's like that sort of life stress, I think, as a coach, you know, that's why it's important for athletes to like be honest with their coach too, whether it's filling in the comment section on Training Peaks. Because it's one thing about doing a workout, it's another thing about, like, say, behind the scenes on that, of like, say, hey, I got in a fight with my wife or husband, you know, it's like, because all that stuff, it's like, you know, we will get a positive response from adding training, adding recovery, and then, you know, getting a training response. For those sort of like, say, you know, life stressors, you know, I don't think that's really the same thing. I think there's no positive benefit. It just eats away at you as like real stress. You know, it's like, say, it's like real pain, real stress, real fatigue. So I think, yeah, it's an unfortunate reality of just human life on that. And you have to just be honest of dealing with that.
I think that's I think that's absolutely critical, to be honest with yourself, you know, and be honest with your coach, and you know, if it's not working, there's a reason it's not working, and something needs to be
Yeah,
adjusted.
and come up with a solution, right?
Sure.
It's like, say, there's always a solution to be found. Of like, say, for you to, I mean, at minimum, everyone should be improving. You know, it's like, say, that's the analogy that I always use, because, you know, even for, you know, someone like Sarah, it's like her last real bike race was the last Olympics, and she set all new PRs in every event she competed in. You know, because that's what's possible. That's someone who's competed since she was 10 years old,
Sure.
and then retiring up here. So it's like that. It should be something that's burnt in your head. If I'm not progressing and improving, you know, we'll always use a percentage of like 3% a year. You know, you need to come up. You know, that doesn't mean that your coach is bad or anything. It just means that you guys collectively need to come up with something that will work
Sure.
better. Because that should be minimum expectations. I improve every year.
It's a good one.
And physiology is different for everybody, so
Exactly.
you know,
So
there
be
is no
creative
hard
on
and
that,
fast.
Yeah. And some stresses benefit workouts. Like I've definitely set some power PRs on days that I wasn't in a good mood.
That's not sustainable.
It's not sustainable, but like short term it works.
That's why you are a sprinter.
Happens. One that I could be interesting for you, Brian. Training riders for tandem versus single bikes. Much difference, or?
Yeah, it's a little bit different. Joe made the switch from single bike to the front of the tandem, and we've talked a lot about some of the changes that he's had. He, the acceleration rates aren't the same, so one of the things, getting him back, he's got some races coming up on the single bike that we just need to get that snap back up, because the tandem, it's 425 pounds worth of machine, and it will go really, really, really fast, but it's really hard to accelerate something like that, and you've got to be perfectly synchronized with both riders on the bike. There's a whole slew of things that are completely different about it. Probably the biggest difference is, everything's going to break all the time on the Silhouette.
I've seen that.
As you know, you
fixed a few things.
You fixed about 100 things on the tandem so far.
Yeah, how many tandem sessions have just ended because something crucial broke?
Yeah, no.
Like a steer or two.
Like ripping threads off of disc wheels for track cogs.
Yeah, chain rings.
Failure.
Yeah, if you're
cogs.
stretching a Zoomy super toughness chain.
Yeah, exactly. This is basically
Yeah,
motorcycle chain.
yeah. When Azumis are failing after 3 rides, it's
a different beast.
It's a lot.
So Coach Abers, so do you think pretty much, because there's that long history of, whether it's, especially on the para side, of course, but like say those tandems just making people very strong. Katie Compton, our US cyclocross.
I forgot she rode tandem for a while.
Several of the Irish girls, but I think some of the Kiwi girls as well. It's like it's almost like that was like, especially for women, it's like there's been a lot of just very strong kind of like elite women coming out of the tandem pilot stuff, and it's almost like say that was kind of the original big gear training for people.
Sure. Yeah, you're definitely getting a lot of strength training on that. And then conversely, the issue with that is, you've got to get that snap back. Yeah, for sure.
It's easy to work with.
Yeah.
Yeah. One that you were wanting to bring up, the report you did for Australia, that could be a cool one to talk about. There's no other questions right now, but
yeah, that
was an interesting one.
Yeah,
for
and
sure.
On that, it's like say we could kind of tie that into sort of the World Championships, but yeah, I mean Australia, they obviously had their sad superbike unveiling on that one. So it's like I was going through the numbers last night to where it's, it's like Coach Abers was involved for our last Olympic cycle, so it's like he could see me at my most stressed out state of, anytime these sort of super bikes from the outside is like 100% sexy and cool.
Yeah.
From the inside, it's, it's a threat to success because you're taking all these bikes, more than likely almost from a different manufacturer, at least a different model. And it's like, say, now let's get, it's like, once again, all those top athletes are very refined in their position, so there's no room for mistakes, so it's, and then even just psychologically, you want to have the unveiling of like, okay, as an athlete, someone believes in this bike.
Yeah.
But then if the bike goes slower, then it's like, I don't believe in this bike.
Yeah.
The superbike's an interesting one too, because they seem to be limited on sizes, so it seems like on a lot of them where like they'll try to force bigger riders on smaller bikes and smaller riders on bigger bikes, just because they don't want to make 5 different molds for a bike. They'll sell 12 of.
Exactly right.
Sure.
It's like say on that to where it's like even working with Felt for their super bike, it's each of the tooling for those molds is very, very expensive, and especially when it's like, how many of these $30,000 bikes am I actually going to sell? Like you said, 10 or 12 of them.
Yeah, tens of them.
Yeah, exactly. So on that, it's interesting. But yeah, that Australian report, though, I think one of the things I really like about that is like, say, now we've seen all those Olympic quotas kind of sort of like, say, come out of the teams, because the report on that, one of the things that I outlined was really anyone who qualifies more than 5 start positions, their odds of doing well in Olympic Games, like, are diminished. And that makes sense, right?
Yeah.
As far as like, you go to the Olympics and you really only are allowed about half the staff as you would at a world championship because of credentials and everything else. So you're already sort of like, say, running kind of below staff levels. And then when you start having riders of like, I don't do just one event, now I'm doing 3 events, and just once again, it's like I can't give 3 events 100%, so each one gets 33%.
Kind of shoot for bronze in all 3, or pick one to do well in.
Yeah,
and
which
out of
never
the
resulted in an Olympic medal. Anyone who wins an Olympic medal is showing up for a gold medal.
Yeah.
And that's a big part of that. So it's like, I think staff and riders, last time around you had a couple of the teams, Australia and Germany, qualify 14 start spots. And I think they each won either 1 or 2 medals each. And the Kiwis, that's the World Championships would have dominated. But once again, spreading very thin, add some extra, a lot more stress to it. And it's just the level, once again, is even higher. So I think on that of just the demands of the Olympics is not a World Championships, So it was interesting for me of seeing those quotas, though, because some of those same countries did the exact same things. Yeah. So New Zealand did the same thing, qualified maximum start spots. Germany, the same thing. I guess Germany, they didn't qualify a women's omnium spot. But once again, of just, in that level of competition, what might have worked, a couple of Olympics ago when the level was lower on those, I think this one will even see that more amplified. The more you water yourself down.
Well, speeds are getting too high.
Exactly, yeah. Because even, it's like, say, even for the Kieran at World Championships, right, it's awesome. You get, 2 Asian countries on the podium there, Malaysia and Japan. So on that once again, I'm just like, say, no one's going to be able to do it all. Or once again, if you do it all, you're going to do it at a mediocre level.
Yeah. Actually, on that note, one thing I've always been curious about, do athletes train differently for a World Championship versus the Olympics, or is it just focusing on a different event but same idea for training?
Yeah, I mean, I think it depends on the context of the year, right? Like, say, for most years, your sort of peak for a track cyclist, like, it's going to be the World Championships. In Olympic year, that's not the peak. We always would look at that as, like, say, a good chance for a dress rehearsal. And that's why we'd always try to use, like, big championship games to try different sequencing, whether it's Pan Am Games, Pan Am Championships, World Championships. So with the thought of, like, say, an Olympic year, the World Championships is your last chance for that dress rehearsal.
Okay.
And then following that, you're going to have something in mind of what's going to cover those next 4 or 5 months. But where, any good coach, any good team's always going to be making those little slight revisions to that. For someone like Australia, that's a team that big. Once again, they had a pretty poor performance at the World Championships, even finishing behind Belarus. That's not a position I would want to be in. Like, say, okay,
not 4 months.
Our list of what we did right is like 2 words. So how do you, and even I know the performance director, Simon Jones, and it's like, say, that's wasn't going to be in the cards that he was planning how to be flying home back to Australia. So it's like, for their team, obviously they have the most talented riders in the world, but the problem with that nowadays is so do 10 to 15 other countries, So it's like the level, once again, even for the girls, I was going through some stats last night in terms of the women's endurance. Last year for the Australians, they won the World Championships. And then this year, even on a faster track, which really over 4K should have been about 3 seconds faster, they rode the exact same time. So really, you're going backwards in Olympic year instead of forward.
Not ideal.
Yeah, and then even, last year for the women's omnium, where were they at in terms of that placing here? Yeah, so they were 14th this year. Last year they were 5th. So once again, trending, and once again, confidence in the superbike, everything else. If you're running that team, that's almost, you wouldn't really wish that situation on anyone.
Yeah, somebody's not having
you don't
a lot
want to be
of fun
going
at the
backwards in Olympic year on that stuff.
Yeah, that's a scary spot to be.
Yeah, for sure. And then even I think that could sort of segue into the endurance side of the World Championships. Rob's been looking at the guys' results. I was looking some at the women. How are we looking on time here, Chris?
About an hour in.
Okay. Yeah, so even on, I think just even touching base for some of our Team USA performances, because obviously all of us are super proud of those guys. Everyone knows how hard they've worked. So I think best ever World Championships, at least, since I've been involved with the sport. I mean, it's always been that our women have crushed it, but this year it was awesome to see, the women continue to do well. Maddie, she was top 10 in the Kieran.
Yep,
Yeah,
qualified. Yeah, she had a
qualified.
crash in the
Oh, okay, yeah.
in the semis and qualified a spot for the Olympics. So
So that'll be really, really. I mean, anytime top 10 of World Championships is awesome for anyone.
For sure.
And then Gavin with the silver medal, was his qualifying time 4:03?
Oh, Ashton.
Ashton, yeah,
yeah.
yes.
It was, well, in the actual final he rode a 4:08, but yes, his qualifying was.
4:03, and I mean the final I thought was impressive because he didn't just stand down.
well, he went after it.
Yeah,
Yeah,
he
he
was awesome on that.
Yeah.
And really, I
You
think
know.
up until last kilometer, was on the move with that. So I mean,
was certainly right there in the mix. But
Yeah.
you like to see, from a coaching's perspective, you really like to see. It's like, no, I'm not settling for second
exactly.
place.
I
I'm
might
going
not
See,
be
that's
able
how
to
I go
beat him.
for it.
I might
Yeah,
not be able to beat him today, but I will be able to.
But I
beat him.
will, yeah.
I'm not scared.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And I think for all those top riders, it's like say a personality characteristic for riders to burn in is like not scared.
Mhm.
Because that translates to so many aspects of this sport that you don't even know. But it's like say even with starting and training on a daily basis, right? If you're scared to do something like that on race day, that means you're scared to go for it on training day.
Sure.
Good point.
Yeah.
Got another question if you guys are up for it. What would typical taper look like maybe the last 3 to 4 weeks heading for competition? What would be too much, 1 or 2 efforts per session, days apart, scared of losing adaptations, etc.?
It's a big one.
Yeah.
Who's that from?
Burton.
Sprint endurance.
Question
Doesn't
maybe.
specify.
Yeah, why don't you cover that on some of the sprint stuff, and then let's circle back to the Team USA stuff.
Yeah, no, I think probably 2 to 3 efforts typically, and it's going to depend on personal physiology for sure.
Or
But
what your normal training load is.
yeah, what your normal, all of those things are going to play a huge factor in that. You don't want to lose adaptation, so you don't want to back it off too much. You want to keep a little tension going into a big competition, but that volume and that volume goes way down. The intensity stays the same. The intensity stays up and at a very high level. You adjust that volume and that load with gearing and amount of efforts. But 2 to 3 efforts, knocking the gearing back, really working on a speed aspect of that a lot, just really getting that firing rate going.
Yeah, and I think even on one of the things, especially for our U.S. sprinters, right, just because there's such a just small amount of competitions, which makes the competition even more stressful, is even just with your coach of just practicing that race day dress rehearsal.
Sure.
Like say, if you know that you're going to be warming up on the rollers on race day, like practice that over and over and over. Otherwise, if you're used to always, hey, this is what I'd like to do, warm up, couple jumps, that's a very different feeling than a roller warm up and then getting pushed off for your effort.
Mm-hmm.
So I think practicing that race sequence in terms of like people getting the most bang for their buck of just, even once a week of like practice that. Otherwise you get out there on race day and just your legs are locking up even before you stand up just because you're so stressed out,
Sure.
on I hope it goes well. But, that's the goal is to like say, I know it will go well because I practiced it over and over and over and over. So I think once you get down into the taper phase, the last month, but I mean, you can even work that into regular training, is a good place to just once again desensitizing people for like say when the battle really comes.
Right.
Rob, what do you think on that stuff?
I think, just kind of tailoring your expectations to what you've been doing in training, right? The taper is only going to give you so much.
Yeah, exactly.
So you're not going to have, you hope to have a superhuman performance, but that's only going to be relative to what you've been doing.
Yeah.
Yeah, taper doesn't do you a lot of good if there wasn't the workload prior to that.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's the bad news.
Yeah.
The bad news is there's no secret formula for the perfect taper. I mean, because really, even when we're looking at stuff at a World Championships or Olympic Games, like we never say, "Hey, I hope we can do this time." Like say that's just you just don't think in those terms.
Right.
It's like say, here's the times that we're planning on doing because we've done this time in training.
Sure.
Yeah, it's like you can still hope, but it's like very rarely. I mean, that's just not at that top of the level of the game. You just don't. You don't operate in the hope.
Yeah,
land.
you know what you've done versus what the adrenaline boost of race day will give you.
And you should.
Give you.
I mean, you should have a pretty good. That's a great point. You should have a really good idea going into that competition exactly what you're going to do. At least for yourself. You know, how that works out, how that plays out in the competition with all the variables you have. You know, bunch racing, sprinting. You know, things where other people are trying to keep you from doing. You know, the nice thing about, you know, one of the nice things about like TP is you can structure that and go, this is what we're riding, this is the schedule we're riding, this is the order we're riding it.
With the goal that everyone crosses the line completely depleted. So maybe Chloe does 3 laps, someone else does 1 lap.
Sure.
But I mean, it's nowadays, you know, with the power meters, with indoor velodromes, it's like, say, we can truly quantify what it takes to win an Olympic medal. We might not be able to say with 100% certainty, hey, here's gold to bronze. But we can tell you by the numbers, you know, because once again, the only thing holding you back on the velodrome is your aerodynamic drag, which we can quantify in a wind tunnel. Like, here's what you need to produce. You know, and that's what Coach Abers used to help with the training camps for the women's team pursuit stuff as well. And that's once again of like, hey, if we're on the operating assumption of we can improve 3% a year and we're 3 years out and you're not within 9% of race demands, it doesn't mean that you're not going to be helpful in the future. But if we have a finite amount of money and time and a number of riders we can take care of, it's like we need to run the numbers so we find the Kellys, the Chloes, you know, those riders out there, once again, that we know by the numbers. Yeah, we've got to teach them how to do a team pursuit exchange. But, you know, something like, say, the Olympic Games, that was literally Chloe's 3rd track race. You know, so once
3rd
again,
race was the Olympics.
Exactly. So on that, it's like, say, if you find them strong, make them even stronger. You know, it's like they're already going to have, you know, just high standards in place, which Chloe obviously did. But once again, like that old adage for the muscle car people, like there's no replacement for displacement. You know, the stronger you are, it's like when we won the World Championships the first time in 2016, Chloe actually tried to stop 1 lap early. And then pulled up, realized, and then got dropped and got back on. But it's like, say, they still won. You know, it's like even now it's, you know, it's not maybe the cleanest or prettiest team to look at for team pursuit exchanges, you know, for a variety of reasons. We have a 333 here in town, not a 250. But it gets the job done. Like, the stronger you are, you can make more of those mistakes, you know, so.
Right. But yeah, did you want to get back on the
so
Team USA?
What was the review for the guys? I know that Gavin and Adrian both had really good performance in the men's endurance.
Yeah, Adrian had a really good ride in the scratch race, picking up 6th. I think that's probably his best individual result, you know, outside of the Madison results him and Holloway have had. And then, yeah, I mean, Hoover had a totally, you know, super consistent Omnium. I mean, he was 8th in the scratch, 6th in the tempo, 10th in the elimination, and then he picked up points where he could in the...
and probably his first World Championships in Omnium as well.
Yeah, I think so. So, I mean, for a first outing, that's pretty good.
Yeah, and Gavin was one of the first riders we had for the men's team pursuit camp when we started that in 2016 or 17. But Gavin, it's another one sort of like behind the scenes of just always, because he actually used to be coached by Chris Daggs, so Chris Daggs and then Roger Young. A lot of people have played into him just because he's from Southern California. But I mean, Gavin, very, very talented. So even as a first-year junior, was top 10 at the Paris-Roubaix at the junior level. So it's just supernatural talent. It's like, say, when he first came in, there was, you know, certain complaints of like, oh, you know, how bad does he win or something. Obviously, once again, the competitive level now, more people have really kind of made him flower into being like, say, his best now. Because I mean, 7th at the World Championships. More than likely will be the rider for the U.S. that lines up at the Olympic Games. But it speaks to his talent, and I don't know his age, but it's got to be close to 21 or 22.
Yeah, I think it's probably around that.
Yeah, I'm trying to figure out when he went to Junior Worlds. So yeah, he's.
It would have been with Nikos that year.
Yeah, it was that year.
Yeah, where was that at?
That was Kazakhstan.
Okay, I know you guys had a good time there.
That was Kazakhstan.
It was a good flight over.
That was a memory. So that would have been 15. So yeah, he's 22 maybe. Somewhere in that ballpark, I would guess.
Just a really, really good guy there too. So
super strong, super talented.
Yeah.
Good race reads.
Yeah, for sure, the full package. Which once again, I've just, you know, a lot of experience racing on the road in Europe. Which obviously, you know, anyone who's seen the roads over there can see why that translates to a good track rider.
Sure.
And just a lot of, like, say, people kind of pouring themselves into him, which they obviously believe in him. Pete Coulson as well as I think is coaching him now though too. But
Okay.
Roger Young still, when he was a junior, I remember Roger was
Sure.
his coach. So, and then team pursuit times, Rob. What was the winning time for the men, or the fastest time in the whole like competition?
I actually forgot to write that one down. I think it was
Is it 47 or 48?
yeah, it was 47.
Okay.
Bloody fast.
Yeah, just unreal. And I mean the starting, opening 1K is just
It's like a
obscene
102.
now. Yeah, it's just. And it's interesting because that Danish team has been a team for so long
Mhm.
now at this point. Where I don't
Exactly.
think any other team out there has had that sort of cohesion for
Yeah, and
that
they're not
length
like
of
they're
time.
old. Like say Lasse, the winner of the Omnium, I think it was I don't know if it was, I think it was 2012. So I mean, they've been doing it for so long, but still like under 30 years old.
Yeah.
It is impressive. Once again, I don't know the population of Denmark, but it's got to be another 4 or 5 million. I mean, small population.
Sure.
But just
Yeah.
and they are so strong.
Well, they're so
strong.
and they're even their Madison win just kind of
Yeah.
demonstrates that they're incredible bike riders in general. I mean, Hansen actually was riding a really strong Omnium up until he was second out in the elimination, and had that not happened, I mean, he would have been in the mix in the top 5 for
Mhm.
sure. So
Yeah. I mean, just definitely once again fast as a team, but also fast on an individual level. And I think that's what a lot of people, really, don't see. And it's probably the same thing as a team sprint too, right, Abers, where it's like, oh, my individual time maybe isn't so fast, but I promise if you put me in the team, I'll go
Sure.
faster. But yeah, it's like looking at all those individual pursuit numbers, like we kind of know from experience that you can only ride 10% faster as a team than your individual time. That, to me, is applicable on the women's side, because one of the teams I thought was really impressive at the World Championships was actually Germany for the women.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of changes there. I think for sure riding bigger gears, because a lot of them are the same riders they've had historically, but literally 3 of the top 4 times in the individual pursuit time. So their fastest rider was a 3:18, 3:20, and 3:21. So those are very impressive times, once again, of constituent parts of a team pursuit. But also, it's like, I think one of the things that people didn't realize, they actually rode the fastest time of the entire competition too, so 4:11.0. So even though they got 3rd position, the bronze medal, that's still probably their first ever World Championship medal as a team. Super, super strong on an individual level. And I think for me, that's almost like, say, my sort of like dark horse gold medal favorite pick for the Olympics coming up. Just because once
Sure.
again, when we're talking about that momentum, just like say, hey, they're going to be, even though it was a bronze medal, but literally the girl who was like second in the individual pursuit, her time last year was a 3:31 individual pursuit time for the 3K. This year's a 3:20. So I mean that is a massive.
That's a chunk of time.
When you say you still have 5 months until you get here,
Yeah.
sort of thing, to where, for Chloe, setting 2 world records in the individual pursuit is awesome. I mean, and it's almost unfortunate with her, right, to where you almost just take it for granted, like, oh, okay,
Another
of course
record.
you do.
Just another record.
Of course
Another
you
record.
did, yeah. But at 3:17 in qualifying, 3:16 in the final, just like when you look at those opening, even once again of like a female rider doing an opening kilometer of 1:08, which is still faster than most men can do for a standing start.
Yeah.
And then, by the way, continue on for some 1 minute flying kilos. It's the first K of 3,
Yeah.
So I think, for our women, once again, like we take it for granted just because they just dominate year after year. But Chloe gives an example of even just that, of just, setting 2 world records, at sea level after you set them for the last 2 years, to where getting better.
I think she's just getting warmed up too.
Yeah, exactly, for sure.
Yeah, she's
Another
got,
quad.
Yeah, well, I think a couple for her, and I think
Yeah.
for her she does well, and it's almost kind of reminiscent of like it's sort of how Taylor Finney always did really well, like say putting those pressure and expectation on himself. But Chloe, really, it'll be the first time in a long, long time that you'll actually see a rider who will go for a gold medal in the team pursuit, and then also try to win the gold medal in the road time trial, and also have to ride the road race too. And to make that more complicated, those 2 will be before the team pursuit. So I think complicated wouldn't necessarily be my recommendation on that. Just because I'd rather see her win 1 gold instead of 2 bronzes. But
And she'd be happier with 1 too.
oh well, yeah, I think for her it's the bronze is like not
It's like a participation trophy.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. But once again, of anyone that can do it, and for her it's a super strong team behind her. Kristen Armstrong, is her coach. So it's like if anyone can pull that off, it's just more of like, oh, if everything goes perfect, but just anyone who's been to those events, it's like it can be the road events 2 hours here, the track's another 2 hours here. Like everything just always way more stressful than what you think. But once again, a challenge for her to focus on, excellence, just more like, I wouldn't really wish that stress on anyone, but if anyone can do it, Chloe can do it for sure.
For sure. Yeah.
But having said that, for team pursuit, it's not a given that they're going to walk away with gold, because you have a lot of teams there at 2 to 3 seconds off, which over 4 kilometers really is
You
one
can make
mistake.
it up.
Yeah, so GB, a couple seconds back. Australia, 5th place, not great for them. But Germany, once again, it's like that. That I think, right now, looking at those individual times, I think that's almost my bet for, like, say, the underdog gold medal favorite.
Yeah, they've got certainly momentum, and you would think plenty of room to, they've got more room for improvement within that 4 to 5 month window than US or GB does, for sure.
And even another variable for the German women, though, too, is like, say they didn't qualify a spot in the Omnium, I don't believe anyways. Didn't participate in the World Championships, at least. So once again, like, that is going to kind of not be another distraction, because it's like, of course, every rider involved in the team wants to do well, wants to win. But human nature is, I'd like to win on an individual level even more.
Sure.
So unfortunately, human nature is always going to be kind of like that distraction drawing away of, like, the team would be cool, but it'd even be cooler to be standing up there myself.
all by myself. So touch on that too, because I think it would be interesting for people to understand what goes on behind the scenes at, and I know what, like World Championships, World Cups, things along those lines. I've not been to the Olympics, but my understanding is the chaos that is in the pits, on your average World Cup is tenfold at the Olympics.
Yeah, and I would say a lot of that might not be expressed like externally. So it's like, as you know from coaching, it's like, say the coach's job is always going to be like, hey, we want to absorb as much of this so the riders don't have to. So, of course, no matter how crappy the situation gets, the goal of the coach is always like, oh, it's fine.
Yeah,
it's
everything's
fine.
good.
It's going smooth as the background's on
Exactly.
fire.
Someone
It's just a little fire. It's fine.
Flaming
Why is
dumpster
he-
floats.
Why is he drinking at 9 a.m.? Don't worry, it's fine. But anyways, I mean, even on a coaching level, you get out there and it just, and it's hard to qualify of just why it feels so different. But, say even, at the 2012 Olympics, like, you've got like Samuel L. Jackson, Kobe Bryant, like all these people up in the stands of like, you walk out there and you're like, say, this is not the World Championships, so it's like, this is like ground zero, the place to be, so even on a coaching level, and it's like, I couldn't even imagine on a rider level of just how that would feel, just that direct hit inside of like, but obviously for anyone who makes it that far, it's like they are the experienced executioner. And for me, it's like, say, that's, I was never at that level. So, as a coach, for me, it's almost like it takes 100% for me to be the best I can. So it's almost like I could imagine only as a rider, it's turned up 10 to 50 fold. But I mean, on that, it's, it is. There's just, it's so different than a World Championships, because you go to Olympic Games and then, like, say, when we go to a World Cup, we used to go to those all the time together, at World Championships, there's nothing that could happen that we can't really fix, even if it's just asserting our will, right? It's like, say, hey, we've got a problem with food or a problem with this. The Olympic Games, good luck.
Yeah.
Like, it just doesn't, you just have no power in that same capacity, So it's different. Having said that, they usually should be better organized than, say, a Pan Am Championships or something like that. But yeah, I think when you start having problems in, like, say, Beijing in 2008, where you could have the smog or different variables, the teams that do the best are the ones that are the most flexible. Like, say, the Spanish team had a breakout performance in 2008. Other teams, that I think just want to hold on so tight and control everything, not so much. But the Spanish team, they just, they're just calm to that stuff, and that's sort of because their natural environment maybe isn't as structured. But yeah, you go to Olympic Games and it's that stress dial way up, and it's just a different paradigm for sure. So it's hard to describe other than just like it's stressful. So you just try to do everything possible. Just one, trying to remember, hey, what can I control and focus on that, and then two, just trying to protect your riders as much as possible, because it's with that stuff, it's just a very volatile environment.
Sure.
Even if everything goes perfectly smooth. But for the U.S., people always think, oh, we're this rich country that has this GB level support, but it's like we're not. It's like last cycle, at least for the endurance side, it's like I was the only full-time employee at USA Cycling. This time around, they'll have a lot more support and staff going into it, but still, it's like at the end of the day, you only get so many credentials. A lot of that stuff, coaches, mechanics, you end up doing everything just because you don't have, you can't bring 2 mechanics. We could bring 1 mechanic and the other coaches help on that stuff. So just doing your best with the thought of, say, my motivation is, just like yours or Rob's or Chris's when he's, helping people with bike stuff, of just helping people become their best and give their best performance, whatever that ends up being on that stuff. But that's I think what keeps us motivated, keeps us going even, when it gets hard and nasty like that.
Sure.
On the World Champ thing, just because you had a couple very new riders medal at World Championships on the tandem, Paige and Stephanie, and I also just want to throw this picture up.
It's a cool picture.
So who was it? Was it you that said? Let me fix this real quick. Was it you that was talking about that moment, or was it Sarah, or who brought up the quote about was it less battle axe, more scalpel?
Oh, that was yeah, that was a conversation I was having with Paige, driving the bike. Paige is super aggressive. As you can, I don't know if you've got the picture up,
it's
but
about to be up. There you go.
Yeah, so clearly, that's a fearless tandem right there. It's like, no, that's my spot. I'm taking it. That's roughly 350 pounds, leaning on our 2 riders, Paige and Stephanie, and it's like, no, we're going in there.
They held it.
Yeah, and we talked about it. We kind of laughed. It's like, less battle axe, a little bit more scalpel with how we're approaching this stuff. But yeah, I couldn't be prouder of those 2. And I could see it coming. I was sitting there watching the live feed.
And awesome, like I say, so first World Championships, so probably their first international sprint tournament too.
First international tournament for either of them. First Worlds, first everything.
Yeah,
and
that's awesome. Yeah, so
and a lot of again, talking about the behind the scenes thing. They had some issues with their aero bars for the kilo, so they had a really frustrating experience for their kilo. Paige went into the bars. They had to be moved to to accommodate the UCI rules, and she approached it with, okay, well, they were moved last minute, last 10 minutes after they'd been kind of trying to dial them in for the last
Been around
week
the
or
infield
2.
for 30 seconds and go.
Yeah, so she went on them and took a hard right turn, and 300 and some odd pounds of tandem taking a hard right turn is going to pretty much suck any momentum you have out of a kilo.
Yeah.
So they had a really underachieving kilo in terms of what they're capable of doing, and one of the really cool things for me was they turned around the next day and went, no, this is not how this world is going to end. Yeah. And this is what we're going to do to fix it. And you
Got a bronze.
You have that, and
that's
make
awesome
a podium.
And speaks to their sort of like internal drive though too.
For sure.
Yeah, watching both of them, they've not been racing that long, and
No, they've been on the bike for 4 months
quickly.
together.
Yeah,
Sure.
And just even a single bike before that, I don't think either one of them had a. Well, I think Paige has only been racing or riding bikes in general for 2 or 3 years. Stephanie, I think, has only been racing for a year or 2.
Yeah, I think Paige is 2 years into the game, and Stephanie, same.
Yeah. Not bad to.
And 4 months on the bike together, and one of the things with the tandem, and it's been interesting because I just started working with the men's and women's tandems, and haven't ridden on a tandem for years. Used to race crits on the back of a tandem. Decided, okay, well, I should probably learn how to drive one of these things just to see what I'm dealing with, and it's a challenge. That picture that you put up, it's a hard thing to control, and 2 people with not a lot of experience together.
Mm-hmm.
And the fact that they've evolved so quickly with that is a real testament to how hard they've worked
For
at
sure,
it.
yeah. Well, and even Paige, even cooler. I mean, working full time.
Mhm.
Stephanie being all the way up in Castle Rock.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a cool situation when it's like, say, bringing them together as a team made them stronger than they were as individuals, and that's
Sure.
always really
Yeah.
cool to see.
Definitely. Yeah, hopefully they get that spot. Find out in June, right?
Find out in June. Yeah.
Yeah, that'd be cool.
Yeah, it would be very cool.
Nice.
But yeah, they've come a long way in a very short amount of time.
Right on.
A lot of work, a lot of focus, a lot of willingness.
Definitely a lot of focus and very hard work.
Yeah, hour and a half drive for both of them. Paige lives in Pueblo. Stephanie lives in Castle Rock. So
Yeah, it's
And-
not easy.
and they're at the track, 2-3 times a week with full work schedules.
Mm-hmm. No, it's impressive for sure. Anything else you guys want to talk about, or you guys want to wrap it up? We're about an hour and 25 minutes in.
Yeah, I'd say it's probably a good place.
Pretty good
Yeah.
spot. Right on.
Sure.
And then I guess for all of our viewership out there, so how often are we thinking about doing one of these, Chris?
I don't know. If you guys want to subscribe and let us know if you liked it, that'll definitely motivate us to do more of these. Just shameless plug there. But we could. I'm all for whenever there's something interesting going on.
So maybe roughly every month.
Probably about that, yeah. We need to drag some others in
So
here.
we'll accumulate enough gossip every
Like-
month.
There we go. Yeah,
Yeah.
we should have
Yeah.
enough to
Yeah.
talk about every month.
You could get Chloe to come in here and you guys can.
Oh yeah,
go
we
at
could
it for a bit.
Yeah, we
That'd
could
be
probably
good.
I mean, that's the beauty of Colorado Springs, right? We just have so many people that
Endless
can pop
talent.
in.
Sure.
And even I was thinking it'd be cool to bring like Gary Sutton. I'm sure
Gary'd be cool.
Yeah.
He could talk. I'm sure a lot on just. Just such a cool guy, but then also it's like he's a world champion himself
Yeah.
on that
Yeah.
stuff.
Well, and taking over the team at the top and then maintaining it,
Yeah.
that's not an easy feat.
No, especially on that to where it's like a coach like Gary walks in a situation like, where's, my staff and my auxiliary team? It's like, oh,
Yeah, you're looking at
yeah,
it. Yeah.
We'd like you to meet your new mechanic. His name's Gary Sutton.
If you guys are I just had one more question pop up
Yeah, sure.
from John. Great Q&A, thank you. Can I ask, what is the best process for converting strength gained from the gym work to speed on the bike? It's a good question.
And I think I would also like to note here is like that we currently have what I'm going to declare the world's strongest bicycle mechanic. That's Chris being our U.S. leader for our U.S. riders.
Okay,
here.
U.S. riders, you need to step it up if I
Yeah,
can
exactly.
beat you.
So Coach Abers, what's the number up there? So Chris, on
yeah,
our
that's,
mountain bike leaderboard.
22:25 at 200 RPM.
Yeah.
Not
so-
bad for a guy that doesn't ride his bike.
Yeah, so there's other mechanics that would like to take on that challenge.
Yeah, no, I think,
I think we're comfortable with our choice.
Yeah, I'm gonna put our mechanic against anybody.
GB, Australia, New Zealand, any of you guys?
Not anyone I can think of.
Nope.
Yeah.
No,
Bring
that's a pretty big number. I think there's a to answer the question though,
Yeah.
just really generally, and I think we'd all love to go into huge amounts of depth with this, but it's so individualized, in terms of how you set up the physiology and where they're at, and how much experience and all of these factors come into play, but essentially you do gym for absolute strength, because you get the most bang for the buck.
Yeah.
And then you need to make that adaptation on the bike, again, doing some big gear work, doing some power work, doing some speed work, doing all of those things that you need from the bike. And then I found that a good transitional thing for that is a bunch of plyometrics, to make that transition from absolute strength to usable strength, along those lines, and making it almost that bridging exercise to
And
get there.
will you do for your motor pacing stuff? I'm sure it probably depends on the training block though too. But smaller gear stuff or bigger gear stuff?
Yeah, no, and a little bit of both.
Okay. Yeah, that's kind of what I like too. I mean, I think once again, I'm just burning that neuromuscular, and very similar to what you were talking about earlier with the 100-meter crank sort of thing of, once again, of checking the box.
Sure.
My feeling is nowadays, from the sprinters that I come in contact with, like if you're going to make an adjustment, sort of in an absolute sense, it's probably better to do more of the smaller gear stuff than the bigger gear stuff now, because somewhat like I always feel like the maximum strength stuff in the gym, whether it's squats or deadlift or whatever lifts you're doing, almost sort of checks that similar box to the big gear stuff
Sure.
on the track. Not exactly, but closer. But once again, with the thought of it, you can add and manipulate sort of the training load through the smaller gear stuff without, and even a lot of that stuff, right, is stimulating even on an endurance level, just small gear sprints or being able to do more work or just checking the box, even general fitness through like small gear training stuff. But
Yeah, absolutely.
One debate I've seen on that a lot. You get guys that have the theory of just focus on getting strong generally in the gym, which I like.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see a lot of guys try to make their gym work match the bike as close as possible, which I don't. At least I'm not a coach, but it doesn't seem to work as well.
I'd say
what's your guys'
maybe
take
closer
on it?
to like say race day when you're not looking. But I mean, yeah, I think as long as you have the benefit of like say, hey, I've got a long time before my main event, and being able to work in blocks, like there's no doubt that works better than trying to do everything. At some point though, you do have to do maintenance once you get closer to the competition on stuff. So, I mean, on that, it's hard to make those generalizations nowadays when it comes to, I mean, the choices of workouts on the track have never been like larger.
Mm-hmm.
The choices in the gym have never been larger. So it's harder to kind of describe those absolutes and like say, hey, do this exactly without like say we
Each
can kind of like
person's
point
physiology
exactly
and strength.
Yeah, or even just within a sprinter, right? It's like you get like a Jenny Reed who is more like an endurance sprinting.
Mm-hmm.
It's like for something like when she won the Kieran in the World Championships in 2008, it's because maybe her max speed wasn't there like with the top people. But yet she could do that for 500 meters.
She just
out.
sat there for
exactly. Yeah. So a lot of it, even within that sort of subset of sprinters, then that opens up in another spectrum of like say, because there's even a wide spectrum on once you get down to even the sprinter level.
Yeah, it makes sense.
But even I think for the amount of efforts, I think if you get the pure fast twitch, those are the people that really either just that you can really destroy quite easily on that.
Sure.
Compared if they have still some of the type 1 fiber, I think that they can, a little bit more load on that. But I think you do see some sprinters that are just 100%, like just pure, just like nitrous, like level sprinters.
Yeah, everything's flashing off really quickly, yeah.
That's how I feel. 5 seconds, I'm
Yourself-
good.
yourself-
After that, I explode.
You're self-nominated.
I blow up really quickly. So. Although I should probably train longer than 5 seconds. So, cool. Anything else, guys, or wrap it up?
Yeah, I
I
think
think we're
Cool.
good. Yeah.
Again, thanks everyone for watching. If
Thank
you want
you.
to see more of this, let us know, and we will keep them coming. If you guys aren't watching them, we'll quit making them. So, kind of that simple. Well, appreciate it.
Cheers.